Hi everyone, it's a beautiful sunny day in Norfolk in January and I'm very excited to be at my first classic car auction of the year. It's Anglia Car Auctions 2-day classic auction. This is the first day and I'll be back tomorrow. I've already done a preview video featuring some of the cars that I picked out before the auction. Today's video is a full review of the auction. I'll include a lot more cars and I'll also follow through and show you what the cars sold for. As usual, a really nice mix of cars here. You can see Sunbeams, Alfas, Fords, Porsches, Jaguars, etc. So all the way from £1,000 to £180,000, so a great mix. So the auction of the cars is going to get underway fairly soon, and it is really busy here. I've never seen it so busy. I've been coming here for years. It's actually so busy it's hard to view some of the cars properly. This is actually one of my favourite cars here, 1978 Toyota Celica 1600 ST. You do not see many of these in the UK, that's for sure. In lovely condition. I think possibly one of my favourites because of the yellow exterior and tan interior, which just seem to suit the car really well. It's been owned since 2012, 77,000 miles on the clock. Looks in really nice condition. I think I just love the design as well. I'd love this. These go for, I think, kind of mid to high 20s usually for good examples. Lovely tan leather interior in this. This is no reserve, so interesting to see what this makes. Yeah, beautiful inside. And here's that Toyota Celica. So it's going to make into the 20s here. Seems about right. Another really beautiful car here, Alfa Romeo Guilietta Sprint. This is a 1962 left-hand drive, obviously. Looks lovely, such a beautiful design. Launched in the mid-50s, this. This has actually got the 1600. You can see some not the best paintwork and perhaps some damage there. So this car has the 1600cc engine, would have originally come with the 1300. And it's been in Japan where it was restored, only showing 31,000 miles. Looks lovely inside. Beautiful car. This is guide price at 30 to 35,000. Yeah, interesting to see if it makes that with some of the slightly suspect paintwork. Audi RS4, obviously a B5 RS4. You don't see all that many of them. I think there were only about 400 or so right-hand drive that came to the UK. This one's looks to be in excellent condition. Very few marks on it at all. It's basically a one-owner car as well, which is why I've picked this one out. I think that you could get these for high teens before COVID. They're now more like high 20s. This one's guided at 20 to 24k. I can't see them depreciating much for some time. Bit of bubbling here, and some very minor chips to the paint here, but it's really excellent condition. And I say basically one owner car because it went through probate, so it's actually got two owners on the V5. Fairly high miles at 111,000, but if you want a car that to enjoy, that's a modern classic, that probably won't depreciate much or cost you that much in real terms over the life of ownership, this could be a good buy. Looks good in here as well, some wear, but the gas struts on this boot need replacing, but that's a very simple job. It's not holding the boot up. Minor issue. 6-speed manual, of course, in these, and it gave 0 to 60 time of 4.9 seconds, so it's a great car. And of course these had an awesome engine for the time, built in 2000. Cosworth enhanced version of the 2.7 bi-turbo V6 of Audi. It gave 380 horsepower, but you had to ring it pretty hard to get there. I think the peak power was about 7,000 RPM. Revised pistons, different cylinder head, bigger intercooler, etc.
12,400 pounds.
So Audi RS4 looks like it'll probably go just about for the guide price. I think that's a good buy. A beautiful looking Mercedes 230 SL Pagoda, 1965. This is the smallest of the inline six engines, I guess, so potentially one of the least desirable. 2.3 litre engine, of course. It's got some history. It's quite high mileage for one of these, 110,000 miles. And I think it's been owned by the auction house, ACA Auctions, since 2012. Guided at 55 to 65,000. I've seen some of these make really, really strong money recently in the last few months. It's not perfect. I guess that kind of guide price seems about right, given perhaps it's not the top of the range, it's not perfect condition, relatively high mileage. Yeah, so interesting to see what this does actually go for. Just such an iconic design, and these are such desirable cars now. The interior looks actually better than the exterior, I think. I'd love one day. So here is the 230 SL. So it's making just about the reserve here, I think. Still provisional though. And so onto this Aston Martin V8 Vantage. This is 2005, so this had a 4.3 litre engine. Really nice condition, wheels are excellent. You can see the carbon splitter at the front. There's carbon here as well, and also carbon mirrors. This is really well looked after, 17 service stamps, 16 of which are Aston Martin. It's only 48,000 miles. You know, I think these have depreciated. You can get these dipping below 20,000 now for very high mileage ones. This is guided at 22 to 25. I mean, I think if it goes bottom end of that or lower, this could be a really good buy. I can't personally see them depreciating much more. This is a manual, so much more desirable. 380 horsepower with this 4.3 engine. I guess it got a bit of criticism for not being the torquiest, so you had to ring it quite a lot. This is coming off a bit, but that's a minor issue. These doors which open up on Aston Martins. Interior looks really nice as well. Some minor wear, but yeah, I think this could be a good buy as well if it goes the bottom end of the reserve guide price. Here's the Aston. It's going to make fairly decent money. It's going to sell. I still think that's a good buy. Sounds about right at an auction, but it's a good car. And then one of my childhood heroes, I remember these in Martini livery doing rallying. So this is a Lancia Delta Integrale. This is a Verde York, so a limited edition of the Evo 1. So what did these run? 210 horsepower or something? I love the body shape. This is interesting. It's obviously had a respray, and I'm not sure, you know, if you look closely at it, there's quite a few areas where it doesn't look the best.
Hello mate, how you doing? Good, yeah, very good.
And perhaps I'm being picky, but you know, with a high guide price, 60 to 80,000 pounds, people expect a very good car for that. Yeah, I know the Evo 1s, I guess, are going for, you know, well, take your pick. It can be 50, 60, 70, and Evo 2s, you know, another 10, 20,000 on top of that. This is a limited edition, one of 200, I think. 16 valves in right-hand drive, I believe. So, yeah, who knows what this goes for. I just think it's not quite good enough to fetch quite what the guide price is asking, but you never know with these because the prices have just gone through the roof. So really interesting one to watch this. And here's the Lancia. I think it's struggling. Not going to quite make a guide price, I don't think. So here's a car I definitely don't see many of. It's a Ferrari BB 512i, so the Berlinetta Boxer. 1984, this one left-hand drive obviously. So this was the mid-engine 12-cylinder road car. And the I was the designation for fuel injection, introduced in I think 1981 for these. Looks as though it's got some paint damage, but actually I think this has just been polished and the polish hasn't been properly buffed off, I think. This is a very late car actually, I think. Testarossa came in '84, so this must be one of the last. It's 4.9 litre V12 in these. And this was in the USA until 2015, when it went to Maranello for a full restoration, I think, and then came to the UK and has really done virtually no miles since then, but had 4 keepers. So obviously just sat in collections, which always astounds me. I think I'd want to drive this, but you know, guide price of 165 to 175,000 pounds. You can see why people don't, I suppose. Pininfarina designed, of course. But yeah, what a beautiful car. Looks lovely inside as well. I'd love one, but it's an awful lot of money. A pretty rare sight, at least for me.
130, 140.
The Boxer is making a lot of smoke here. Speaking to some people, they say it's misfiring quite badly. But it's crept up to about 160,000, so it's getting close to the reserve price now.
It is provisional with you, it's 159,000.
It's going to be close. So here's a very nice looking Ford Sierra Sapphire Cosworth, 1991. It looks pretty well looked after. It's got 18 stamps plus a few more handwritten ones. It's had 10,000 spent on it in the last 3 years. Cam belt done, turbo hoses, rear subframe's been given some attention. This looks pretty nice. For a guide price of 22 to 26,000 pounds, this could be a decent buy, I think. Still a lot of money, don't get me wrong. Looks pretty good inside as well. Obviously these are the 4-wheel drive. Yeah, not really much wear in there, to be honest. The seat's a bit worn. Driver's seat. So, I have to feature some Land Rovers, some old series Land Rovers. This is a Series 2A. It's 1964. Lots of different colours on it, as you can see. It doesn't really matter so much with these Landies. Got a nice new canvas hood. Obviously got new door tops here, I think. The bulkhead looks reasonable, no severe rust coming through down here. I mean, obviously the bodywork is tatty and not looking the best. Underside looks pretty good, to be honest, from what you can see at least. I suspect that must have had a new rear chassis section at some point, because that looks really good, rear cross member, etc. I think this is actually for 5,000 to 7,000 guide price, really good. And so here's another Land Rover. This has the Safari roof. It's a 109-inch wheelbase. 1970, so Series 2A. But it says it's got a Series 3 chassis. I don't quite understand this one, if I'm honest. Paintwork's not good. Lots of rust on the front here. Superficial, but quite a bit. And looking a lot rustier under here, I have to say, than the Series 2A we just looked at. This is guided at 4 to 6. I would take the short wheelbase one, which looks much better to me. Yeah, it's obviously paint on the chassis there, but there is quite a lot of rust on those outriggers, for example. A bit on the bulkhead. Yeah, I'd go for the short wheelbase, as I say. Still, at that kind of money, you know, around £5,000, you can't really lose, to be honest. Yeah, rear cross member, very rusty. So, Ferrari Mondial, this is a 1995, one of the later ones. This one comes from Switzerland in 2017, so left-hand drive. This is the top of the range, effectively. It's a Mondial T, so they started life with a 2.9 litre engine with the Quattro Valvolve, the QV, then moved to a 3.2, and then this was a 3.4, so 300 horsepower, I think. Guided at 30 to 35,000 pounds. You know, one of the least desirable Ferraris, I think it's fair to say. But I mean, it's in lovely condition. I think it's quite a good buy still. As I say, it's the T version, so it's top of the range in terms of the Mondial. Yeah, I think that's quite a lot of car for your money. And here's the Mondial. Struggling to make it. If it sells for that, that's a good buy. So come to see this Mercedes 280 SL, quite rusty. It's been partially restored. I think the previous owner bought it to restore it, so it's an R107 generation, which these fetch a lot of money for good condition ones, tens of thousands of pounds. This is guided at £6,000 to £8,000. Obviously needs work doing on it. But for someone who's willing to have a project, put in a bit of effort to restoring it, I suppose it could be a good buy. Not one for me, obviously, but the interior looks reasonably good. It's just how extensive the rust is, I suppose. I've not fully checked it out. So interesting to see what that makes. So I just passing by Honda S2000. I was surprised at the high guide price of this, 14 to 16,000. And then I looked a bit further, and it's because it's very low mileage, 41,000. Excellent condition, so I can kind of understand why that's a relatively high guide price. The other high guide price, when I was looking through them, was this Citroen AX GTI. Really rare to see a GTI version of these. This is guided 12 to 15,000. And again, it's because it's really low mileage. This one is actually super low miles, 16,000. It's had the interior redone. So again, I can see why that's guided like it is. There's quite a few RS turbos and RX and XR3Is. So just passing by this one, which is guided at 6,000 to 8,000, 1989. Had a mild restoration. And some recent work, including cam belt, etc. £6,000 to £8,000 looks like a reasonable buy. Yeah, looks in pretty good condition. I was actually on my way though to pick out this VW Karmann Ghia. Not a car I'm usually hugely enthusiastic about, just doesn't appeal to me that much, but this one is in such good condition I just thought I'd feature it. It's a 1964 left-hand drive, had the 1600cc engine. This one was imported from the USA in 2008, owned since 2014, had quite a bit spent on it but been unused in those 10 years basically. But it's obviously had a huge amount of work. I mean, the interior is immaculate. Really nice. This is guided 13 to 16,000. I've seen good ones of these advertised in the high 20s, so you know, maybe bottom end of that guide price is a good buy. There's quite a few Ford Capris here. I've picked this one out because it's a Mark 1, which I like. There's lots of Mark 3s here, and it's quite unusual being the 3-litre GT and an unusual colour. So really nice condition car, looks lovely. Of course these run 3-litre V6 Essex. And it was only briefly made, this GT, before the GXL superseded it. Interior is really beautiful. Yeah, so this is lovely, guided at 18 to 22,000. I should think it'll make that. And then here's one for the brave, Bentley Arnage, 1999. So this is the non-turbo 4.4 V8, so 350 horsepower, and just what a lot of car for your money. This has some minor issues. It looks in great condition though. Yeah, lovely inside, absolutely beautiful. I think one of the windows isn't functioning correctly, and there's a fuse which blows occasionally and stops it starting. So there are some issues, but guided at £7,000 to £9,000. If you're feeling brave, it's a lot of car for your money. It's on 112,000 miles, so pretty high for these cars. And it's got a decent-ish history with invoices, etc. So over to this BMW E46 M3. Picking this one out because they're always a popular car, and this one is no reserve, which is quite rare to see. It's in average condition. The wheels have the dreaded white worm on the diamond cut wheels, happens quite a lot. It's a bit difficult to see the condition. Unfortunately, it's rained and the cars are wet, but it looks reasonable on the outside. Certainly nothing alarming. So this is a 6-speed manual, crucially. It's owned since 2020. It's got 17 stamps, and I suspect also why it's no reserve is it's 140,000 miles, so fairly high. But very interesting to see what this goes for with no reserve. I think inside, probably fair to say you can see it's a 140,000 mile car. Nothing terrible, except perhaps for the gear knob, which I can see looks very worn. Bolsters look pretty good though for the mileage. So this of course had the S54 engine, 3.2 litre inline 6, making 340 horsepower-ish at about 8,000 RPM, so legendary engine, and looks very, very clean in the engine bay. So just passing by this Austin Cambridge, which I admit I know nothing about, other than liking its looks. But I actually came to see the Jaguar XJ Sport behind it. So this is X308 era, and this is the 3.2 litre, so the smaller V8 that they did. And picking this one out because it's in such good condition. Really well looked after and really low miles, and it's rare to find one in such good condition. These are really rust prone. I can't see anything untoward on this car. Looks really nice, and to see one on such low miles is pretty rare actually. These are often quite high mileage cars. I mean, inside looks really, really good. So owned for 20 years, but it's been in storage for a couple of years, I think due to the owner's ill health, but has just had an MOT and service before coming to auction, and all looks good. So I think this is a good buy. 4 to 6 guide price, I think that's a really good buy. So quite a few MGBs, omnipresent MGBs at auctions. I picked this one out just because it's different and I like different cars. This is obviously one that's been converted for track. So really interesting. Restored in 1989, I believe it was, and at that time fitted with a 2 litre Celica engine. It's got a roll cage. This is guided at 5,000 to 6,000, so if you want a fun car, it's good for fast road and track. Good little car, obviously stripped out inside, no passenger seat, etc. Yeah, just an interesting one. So I have to feature a Land Rover. This is a 1966 Series 2A, 2.25 litre petrol. Looks really nice condition. I'm not a huge fan of this matte green paint, but it's really nice looking on the underside. Chassis looks good from what you can see. And footwells as well, and it's been really well looked after. It's had quite a bit spent on it, a new clutch, new exhaust, I think new carb and distributor. Obviously you can see the new canvas, which looks great, and a paint job. Even though I'm not a huge fan of that, there's no big issue with it. It's just I don't think the matte is quite the right finish for it. But looks really good, and guided at £8,000 to £10,000. I mean, I think you'll struggle to find a better one for that money. So here's the Landy. Yeah, it's going pretty much in the middle of guide price. Good buy, it's a nice car. There are quite a few minis here. Just picking out this one, it's a 30-year anniversary edition car. Obviously 1989. It's only had 3 owners. The last one since 2009. Has been off the road for the last 13 or so years, but had a recent MOT which it sailed through, and looks in pretty good condition. There's quite a range of condition, I think it's fair to say, with the minis here. So I picked this one out just because I think it's perhaps one of the better condition ones here, and a reasonable price at 5,000 to 6,000 guide. I've never been a huge fan of minis, but they are really, really growing on me, and I feel it's a car I might need to own at some point. So this is a bit of a random one, but I just love the shape of these Reliant Scimitars. You don't see that many. This paintwork is not great, probably won't come out on camera. It's obviously been kind of sanded and part touched up. It's very rough. It needs a paint job, basically. But it's been owned for the last 8 years. You can see the boot full of parts and enthusiast books, etc. The last owner for 8 years has done quite a lot of work on it. So this is obviously enthusiast owned, which is always a good sign for me. Ran the Ford Essex V6 engine. Inside looks really good condition. It looks like it's the manual, 4-speed manual as well, rather than the 3-speed auto. I like these. Guide price 2,500 to 3,500. I mean, I think that's great. So the Scimitar is making way over the guide price. There's been a lot of interest in this. It's a lot of money considering it needs a paint job. So really interesting car this, Skoda Felicia Fun pickup in bright yellow with matching yellow interior. And these are unique because of this pull-out temporary seat they had. Huge fun. Really nice looking 1991 K10 Nissan Micra. 1 litre LS. Used to see these a lot on UK roads. It's got a little bit of rust here and there, but it's been owned by the same family for 26 years. Looks really nice inside, so I think it'll make good money. And here it is, no reserve, so it'll sell. So this is a Subaru Impreza Turbo, so got a kind of bog standard, if you like, 2 litre turbo, 1998, 1 lady owner from new and 61,000 miles. So a guide price of 8,000 to 10,000 looks pretty reasonable with that in mind. It's in good condition, can't see any of the notorious rust on this, but I haven't checked it out thoroughly. And looks very well looked after inside, as you'd expect for a one owner car. So I suspect this will sell for that. It's close, but not quite. So coming to look at this 1969 Jaguar 420G, it's enormous. I can't get over the size of it. I haven't seen one for a little while this close actually. I forget how big they are. They were top of the range. 4.2 litre I think on triple carbs. Not really much paperwork with it, but it looks pretty nice condition. Just such an epic car, and the interior is just sublime. Look at this. It's huge, but also looks absolutely wonderful. Guided at £5,000 to £7,500. Seems like a lot of car for your money. So this is an interesting car. This is a Ford Capri 2000, built in the 1980s from 2 different cars as training at a technical college, and restored between 2004 and 2016. It's got a Sierra Pinto engine and a Type 9 box. So very strange. and difficult to see what that'll make. Here it is, 8 to 10,000 guide price. So this is a Mercedes-Benz 190C Fintail, and just picking this out because I love the shape of them. I forget how big these are actually. 1965, so this is the smaller 1.9 4-cylinder engine. Of course they did 6 cylinders as well, so perhaps less desirable. This one's in fairly average condition externally, I would say. The paintwork certainly needs attention. It has had about £8,000 spent on it though, in the last I think 8 years or so, with the same owner during that time. The interior looks absolutely excellent though, I have to say. And you know, with that guide price, that seems like a fair guide price. These often sell for quite a bit more, so if someone's prepared to spend a little bit on it, tidying it up, I think you got a good value car here. Here's the 190C, the Fintail. So a Porsche Cayman S. I've never been a huge fan of these, but again, these are getting so cheap now. Guide price 7 to 9,000. That's quite a lot of performance for that price. So this is the S, which had a 3.4 litre engine rather than the 2.7, so 300-ish horsepower. It's on 100,000 miles. Just had a new exhaust. Obviously an aftermarket spoiler as well. Apparently there's a intermittent problem with the passenger window. It is, I think, in the low risk area, it's fair to say, for the IMS bearing issues, but you struggle to find one under 9,000 even at high mileage, so you know, bottom end it could be a good buy. So this is a bit of a random one for me, a Toyota Celica. I've only picked this out because it's no reserve. It's in average condition, as you can see. It's a 1.8 engine in these, but it's got a decent history, 141,000 miles. But this could be a really cheap car, you know. Yeah, some minor paintwork issues. Not sure if that paint matches on that rear bumper, but yeah, I don't think there's anything too bad on this car. So again, just one that I'd be really interested to see with no reserve. You know, how cheap does someone end up getting this? I think it's got a fairly decent history as well by the looks of it. And you know, the wear isn't too bad. There is obviously some wear on that fabric seat. And a bit of trim I noticed around the headlights surround is loose. So certainly some issues. Could be a cheap car though. So final car I'm featuring today. There'll be lots more, as I say, in my longer video review afterwards. This is a bit of a random one as well for me. It's one for the brave, I think it's fair to say. So it's a Mitsubishi Evo VIII and extensively modified. A crazy amount of mods. So obviously the wheels, it's lowered. It's got those small carbon mirrors you often see on the Evos. Not my cup of tea with the wheels for sure. It's got lots of carbon trim on it. You can see how easy it is to curb those wheels. But the real thing about this car is the amount of engine modifications it's had. Just incredible. But very strange that there is no paperwork with this car. So you'd think someone's owned this for a few years and spent a huge amount of money on it, possibly tens of thousands I'd imagine, modifying this, and yet doesn't have any paperwork. Huge exhaust, which I find really odd. The only thing in the file is photos of the underside to show it's not rusty. But quite bizarre, so makes me slightly suspicious. Perhaps I shouldn't be, but inside looks okay. You can see the amount of mods, massive turbo on this. I spoke to the guys and they said it's running over 700 horsepower according to the owner. Crazy. So, see what that goes for, guided at 14 to 18,000. Definitely one for the brave. So Lotus Esprit, obviously instantly recognisable. This is a fairly late one, an X180 version, 1990. This was effectively, I suppose, bottom of the range. It's the 2.2 naturally aspirated engine, 180 horsepower. Great design though. Designed by the same guy that designed the McLaren F1, I believe. Owned since 2009. It's had 9,000 spent on it in fairly recent years and been in storage for the last year. Guide price of 14 to 16,000 seems pretty reasonable. Yeah, very nice looking. And here's a fairly rare car. It's an MG ZT SE260. So famous, of course, for having the 4.6 litre V8 Mustang engine. Only running just over 250 horsepower. But it's pretty rare. Only, I think, 384 of these made in the UK. 76,000 miles. This looks in really good condition. I'm actually quite interested in this just because of its novelty factor. Here's the Mustang engine, of course. I've checked out underneath, sills, etc. look really good. It's pretty well looked after. Guide price of 6,000 to 8,000 seems about right. If it goes cheap, I'll be interested, but I suspect there's quite a lot of interest in this actually. Here's the MG ZT. Yeah, it's pretty much in the middle of the guide price. So this is a very nice looking and slightly unusual Series 2A. It's 1964. Something I'd be interested in if I didn't have a very similar one anyway. So I also have an 88-inch truck cab like this, same colour. This one is interesting because it has a Perkins diesel engine, famous engine, 3.3 litre. It's also got power steering, servo brakes, so it's got quite a few nice upgrades. And actually, usually you see that the non-standard and modified versions of these actually fetch decent money still. It doesn't seem to affect the value too much. Underside looks pretty good from what you can see. Guide price for this Series 2 is £8,000 to £10,000. It's not going to make that. I think that's a really good buy. Sorry, the Perkins diesel probably drowns everything out. So this is a lovely looking car, Volvo 131 Amazon. I love this era Volvo. This is 1970, it has the 2 litre B20 engine. It's got some history, polybushed, had some work to the front subframe and axle rebuild, but it's in fairly average condition, I think. And I think the guide price probably reflects that. It's £8,000 to £10,000. Yeah, obviously needs a bit of care and attention in some areas. Obviously don't fetch quite as much as the P1800s, which I would absolutely love one day. But quite a rare sight, these. And a very nice car to add to a collection. Some wear and tear on inside as well. Car, it's a G4 Challenge Freelander from 2002, obviously built for the Land Rover G4 Challenge across Africa, I think US and Australia. One of only 30 of these in Freelander form. They made them, I think, in Defender form as well, and other models. Tangier's orange. Came with all sorts of engine, guards, sill guards, roof lights and rack, etc. Had a replacement engine, 2012, it's on 100,000 kilometres. There's a ripper here on the seat, as you can see. Guided at 6,000 to 8,000. Here's a Porsche 996, 911. It's the non-S, so no nice wide arches, which I prefer. Low miles, 43,000, guided at 16 to 20, seems steep to me. Very desirable Capri 2.8i here, 1988. Only 4 owners and 76,000 miles. It's got a body kit, it's got an exhaust. 15 to 18,000 guided. That seems to be what they're making for these 2.8i's. Looks a pretty nice example. Yeah, very good inside as well. And then another car that seems to make good money at the moment, Sunbeam Alpine Series 5. This is 1966. It's got a 1725cc engine. Had over a 10-year restoration between 2008 and 2019. Lots of items renovated, full respray. It looks really tidy, and I reckon this is a pretty good buy at £9,000 to £11,000 guide price. Really nice example. Here's the Capri, extremely loud exhaust. Doesn't look like it's going to make reserve. So lovely looking Ford Mustang. I was drawn to this because it's so red. It came to the UK in 2017. It's a 1966 model. It's got the 4.7 litre engine. Not got a huge history, and the paintwork, if you look closely, probably won't come out on camera, isn't great. Lots of bubbling, and yeah, it's just not a very good paint job. Guided at £12,000 to £15,000 though. It doesn't seem bad for the money. Really eye-catching. And this is the red corner, so you'll see a number of other red cars here. It's MGA. Yeah, lovely looking. Maybe one day I'll own one. And you may recognise this Daimler Double Six from the last auction. It didn't sell, so apparently it's had a £40,000 restoration. I looked at the paperwork and it doesn't have any receipts. It does have pictures of a restoration, but no receipts or invoices in there, which is slightly odd. I guess someone just didn't keep them. It's guided at the same, I think, as it was last time, 10,500 to 12,500, which seems reasonable. And then here's an Escort RS Turbo, 1987, and it's previously written off through accident damage, but it seems to be fairly sensibly guided at £8,000 to £10,000. These cars are just incredible. Daimler Majestic Major limousine here. This car started in Italy, went to Switzerland, Hong Kong, before coming to the UK in 2012. 77,000 kilometres. It is absolutely enormous. Guided at £7,000 to £9,000. You get a lot for your money. But it doesn't have a huge amount with it, paperwork-wise. So it'd be interesting to see what that makes. This space in here is just immense. Amazing. So you may also recognise this car. This is a 250 SL Pagoda that's been decked out for kind of classic endurance rallies, and obviously been used for that as well. It didn't sell last time. I think the guide price is the same this time at 30 to 35,000. You know, it's tatty and well used and needs a bit of attention in some areas. I don't think that's unfair. And so I think the guide price is a bit high. This is 1967. It had an engine rebuild in 2016. I mean, I love this, the fact that it's converted for rally, etc. I quite like modified cars, but I think its appeal is limited. Although untouched Pagodas would fetch well above that, this is A, not in the best condition, and B, it's a really, really niche taste to have this kind of rally conversion. So interesting to see if it sells this time. So out to this Audi A8. This is the 4.2 litre V8. I actually owned a similar car. This is 1998, sorry. I owned an S8, which was a great car. It was fairly high miles, like this one, 160,000 miles, but did really well for me. In fact, I bought it from this auction house thinking about it. This has got some minor electrical issues. It's got a minor oil leak, but it's been pretty well looked after. and guided sensibly at 2,500 to 3,500. I'm sure it's got a lot of life left in it. Yeah, I like these. I like this era of car as well. This is a very interesting car. So a Triumph Spitfire, it's a Mark IV. It's just been totally modified. It's running a 1.7 litre engine from a Ford Puma. It says it has an RX8 5-speed gearbox. There's some interesting panel gaps here. But I'm pretty sure the RX8 had a 6-speed gearbox, so I'm not entirely sure about that. It's got a custom prop shaft and clutch, different suspension, full restoration in the mid-2010s, 2015. It's got an ECU, Hilux brakes. I mean, just everything is modified. I love this kind of one-off modified cars. They're great fun. Guided at £5,000 to £7,000. Looks pretty good for that money. Jaguar XJ X308 era. Always drawn to these. No reserve. That's why I've come to see it, just to check it out. These suffer badly from rust, so it's the first thing to look at. And yeah, here's the typical rust, very bad on the wheel arch here and down there. So I suspect there's a very sorry looking underside to this car. Yeah, you can see here it's rusted all the way through on that arch. But no reserve, so for someone who fancies it, it's good value, I expect. It's a fairly rare car, Mitsubishi Shogun GLS. This is the V6 petrol, that's why it's fairly rare, short wheelbase, 1997. It's got a limited history, 67,000 miles. Looks on superficially in fairly good nick. Guided at 4,500 to 5,500, which seems sensible. See what it's like underneath. Yeah, there's quite a bit of rust here. It's difficult to tell without really getting up on ramps, but you can see a fair bit of rust. Not one I would touch without a kind of proper look over it. It may not be anything structural or too bad, but you can see quite a bit of rust set in. Inside looks decent though, and I love all these gauges for your angle, etc. Be nice to see more off-roaders with these types of dials nowadays. So I'm drawn to this one because my first car I bought with my own money was also an R-Edge Rover 200 with the 1.4 engines. This is a 1.4 as well. Paintwork's not the best, a few scrapes, etc. It's no reserve though. It's 1998, obviously. It's been with the same family since it was 6 months old and only done 30,000 miles, so it could still fetch decent money. So here's a Mercedes SL 320, 1994. Was in Singapore until 1998, 80,000 miles. Had a respray in 2022, but not really much history on this. It's guided at only 2,500 to 3,500, so I mean that's a steal if it goes for that kind of money. I suspect it may fetch a bit more because it looks fairly decent despite the lack of history. Smart Brabus, you don't see many of these in auctions. 2005, 700cc engine, I think they run about 100 horsepower, rear engine, rear drive. 54,000 miles, guided at £6,000 to £8,000. I just wonder if it'll have that much interest, only because they're so niche. And then checking out this Mercedes CL 500, so V8 engined car, 2001, 5 litre V8. It's got stability control warning on, 53,000 miles only, lots of invoices. I always get nervous with Mercedes, high-end Mercedes of this era, having owned some. Looks like it's got a ride height problem that may rectify itself when the engine's turned on, but that would worry me. So the interior looks in many ways similar to the W220 S600 that I owned, 2003 model. The centre dash, etc. is quite similar. Yeah, 2,500 to 3,500 is probably about right. I think it's a risky car to buy myself. I came to check this 540 BMW 540 out. I thought it could be a good buy because it's only guided at 2,500 to 3,500. 4.4 litre V8, high mileage, 160,000 miles. But looking a bit closer, it's not in the best condition. I mean, obviously it's an old car, but it wouldn't be one I was interested in. Some rust and paintwork issues. Enough to put me off anyway. But old BMWs do tend to hold their value pretty well, so I expect it'll get good money. CLK 350, until I saw this I kind of forgot that I'd owned one of these many moons ago. So that's why I'm checking it out. It's a nice car, but I'm also checking it out because it's no reserve. It's got this leather on the inside door which wrinkles up. It seems to do that on this era car. This is 2006. I think the air conditioning isn't working. Nearly 100,000 miles. You can see that doesn't stay up, but no reserve. So another fairly rare MG. This is the ZS 180. So this ran a 2.5 litre V6. And this is interesting because there's only two owners, but only 6,500 miles. And no reserve. Recent cam belt change. This could be a great buy. So unfortunately these cars you can't get too close to, they're roped off. These are the kind of barn find and non-runners basically. But some interesting cars here, including this, obviously the RS2000 and two E-Type Jags, Series 1 and a Series 2, both with a 4.2 litre engine. You know, they've been unused for many years, not in great condition. I mean, they're kind of barn find condition. No one's pretending anything otherwise. But interesting to see what they make. Obviously this RS2000 has got a fair bit of rust in places as well. I think it's been in storage since 1997. I expect that'll still make pretty good money because the market is so strong for them. The E-Type's perhaps less so, but we'll see. And then there's also another Ford Sierra Sapphire Cosworth, unused since 2018. I guided at £25,000 to £30,000. Just seems frankly ridiculous because that's the same pretty much guide price as the one I featured earlier, which looks to be in good running condition. So I can't see it's going to make that. And thanks very much for watching. I've got lots more auction videos and a full calendar this year, so please do watch out for more videos and subscribe if you like.